Hey, what is up, everyone? Tyler Ramsbey here, back with another live stream. Whether you're watching this on Twitch as it happens after the fact on YouTube, hey, I want to welcome you back to the channel. Today is kind of a unique day. I have two interviews in one day. Earlier today was with Amoeba Man, and now I have the honor of sitting down with the Infosec Pat. Hey, Pat, welcome. Welcome to the Twitch channel. Welcome to my YouTube page. Welcome to my basement, I guess, in some ways as well. Good to have you here.
No, likewise. Thank you so much, and it's an honor. Appreciate it.
And for those of you watching, you didn't see our technical difficulties as we were trying to get this figured out. So we're testing things. Then Pat restarts his computer. He gets hit with the evil Windows updates and firmware updates, and then he got his working. Then mine stopped working, but we are here. As far as I can tell, everything is good. So if there's any of you watching on Twitch right now, if anything does look off or sound off, please just drop a comment. But everything should be good from what I can see. And also, if you are watching on Twitch, and I'll remind you guys of this as we go, if you have any questions, feel free to drop a question as a comment, and I'll do my best to get to it. Otherwise, I have a bunch of questions. So let's just dig into it, Pat. Let's begin with the first question. The first question I always like to ask people is a classic elevator question. So if we had never met, you only had a few minutes to introduce yourself. Who is Infosec Pat?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. Thank you. So a little bit about myself, if no one has ever seen me before, and if you're new to me, welcome. A little bit about myself. I'm from the Northeast. I'm from New York originally. I didn't grow up with computers. I never played on a computer until I was probably 15 years old, 16 years old. And I came down, I lived in South Florida, came down to Florida for school, and I actually worked as an electrician right out of high school, because that's what, what I was told to do, right? And I skateboarded, so I've been skating for 28 years now, and I always filmed, I always was interested in multimedia, but never into the IT world. So when I started undergrad, I started with multimedia design.
Sure.
So yeah, and then, I was always into computers, in my early 20s. And yeah, I was like, okay, let's take this to a career. And I started, dabbling in, the A plus. We'll get into certifications later, but got into some certification training and yeah, then led into cybersecurity, and here we are today. I can go on and on for the whole time and talk about but I'm not
Sure.
going to do that. That's a little bit,
All right.
a little bit about me.
So Florida, dude, do you have any crazy alligator stories? That's the real question I have for you.
Yeah, actually, it was about a month and a half ago. There, I normally take walks in the morning. I broke my shoulder 4 months ago playing hockey. So I haven't been in the gym. Yeah, so I haven't been in the gym. So I've been walking
Wait, there's
and
ice in Florida? Is this like an indoor hockey rink? Like Florida's
yeah,
pretty hot, right?
yeah. No, this was actually playing street hockey, roller hockey.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So I actually, about a month and a half ago, and I was actually talking to my brother, and he was up north, and I screamed. I'm not going to use profanity, but I said a bad word. I was like, effing, what the hell? Literally an alligator came out of a pond and grabbed a duck. So, and Johnny, my brother was like, Pat, what are you doing? I'm like, John, I did. A duck just got snatched by an alligator, you know? But yeah, so now that's what, I never seen that before. And I've been down here for 17, 18 years now. And I never seen that before. But I was taking a walk at like 7 o'clock in the morning and that happened. Or
That's
duck.
insane, dude.
Yeah.
I've been to Florida just a few times, like on vacation to the Orlando area. And the only thing I know about Florida is I feel like everything in Florida is trying to kill you. Whether you're playing hockey, whether it's alligators, whether it's like amoeba. Like I feel like every time I read about Florida, there's some crazy stuff happening. So I'm glad you're still alive and the alligator didn't grab you rather than that. So
Yeah, there's
fascinating
crazy
stuff.
stories. Like a dog, like little dogs get snatched up.
Insane.
Because especially like the old ladies, they just let their dog out to use the restroom real quick or the bathroom to come back in, and they wander off and they try to get by the water, by the little ponds, and good luck. But
That's
yeah,
just history. You become a little snack for that gator. Insane. Insane. Well, hey, let's talk about cybersecurity. I think I could talk about alligators in Florida probably the rest of the
Yeah.
episode. Just I'm sure there's some unique stories. But so right now you have a few
Mhm.
different titles. I jotted them down. You're a senior security consultant. You're an instructor. You're essentially a professional hacker. You shared yesterday in our weekly meeting. You do some forensic stuff. Like, what are you all involved with? Like in a typical week, what are you all doing besides fighting alligators?
Yeah, and that's a good question. It varies every day. So my favorite thing, I don't really advertise this too much or like on anything, but it's forensics. I always enjoyed forensics. I enjoy going to court. I don't really say this too much on the outside, but that's something that I really, really, love. And as a consultant, I do some consulting with small MSPs down here in Florida. So say, for example, you're an MSP, you do break fix, Office 365, etc. Now you need someone to do that cyber piece because, maybe you have to do a cybersecurity insurance policy. And have you done a pen test? If it answers NO, they'll get me involved and I'll help them with that process. If it's an IR, if instant response setup, like setting up your SOC, and triaging, TDR stuff, all that good stuff. So day to day, I do that. I help small, medium-sized companies doing assessments, engagements, and also at night, if I'm doing some content, I do content creation and teaching for CSS, where it's the Cybersecurity Specialist program. That includes the Certified Ethical Hacker, which like we were talking about the CISSP yesterday, that's another one. But I can't say that too much because I don't know who's going to hear this. The Security Plus and the Pen Test Plus. So in that program, once you get out of that cohort, you should be CEH Security Plus and Pen Test Plus. If you follow the syllabus and you took your exams when the timing was right. So a lot of people don't. They say, "Oh, I want to go through the whole thing and take it." Meanwhile, like you're gonna forget, because when we're on the Security Plus, it's totally different than the Pen Test Plus, right? And yeah, and that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Fascinating. And let's talk forensics just a little bit. And like I told you, like I sent you questions, they're totally a skeleton, so I always go off track. But forensics, I think, is an area when people think to themselves, I want to be in cybersecurity. Often people don't think forensics. They think either pen testing or blue team type stuff. So let's just talk a little bit about forensics, both for my own learning, for those watching. I know the basics. I know chain of custody. I work with Encase a little bit, but just in a lab environment and very limited use. So when you say forensics, can you just walk us through what that process looks like? A company contacts you. They need your help with forensics. It's a case going to court. Like, what is your next step? What are some of those big things that you do that you thoroughly enjoy about it?
No, totally. And just like you said, the chain of custody. Say, for example, we get a drive. I deal with a lot of law firms, right? So a law firm will have someone that tampered with evidence, and they delete data. Now, with that deleted data, what are we going to do, right? Now, obviously, it gets a little tricky if you're running, SSDs. And it's not like the old days, you have a spindle, you have a SATA drive. It was a little easier because you throw that in an enclosure, you upload that to Encase. We can extract data, we can use other forensic tools. Or like right now, I'm dealing with something that has to deal with Encase. We take the file, we put it into Encase, and we go ahead and look at evidence that we're looking for, key terms. For example, SSN, credit card, or whatever if the cases has to do with, attorney Bob, we look at Bob's emails. We'll go through his PSTs, which if you guys aren't familiar with what a PST is, or an OST, that's the file that's associated with Outlook. Now we can take that file, if it's from, getting off the e-discovery on Office 365, on that compliance page on there, we can pull it down, pull it into Outlook, and see if we can go through any data. And it, the list goes on. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm referring to. And it can get a little deeper, like in the older, not even the older days, like 3 years ago, we would take platters out, like replace platters in a lab without white little gloves and inside of a little box that we can't get lints or anything because then that's screwed up. So, I have my little box in my trunk. You just put all the evidence, and like for a hard drive, you have to put it into like a plastic bag, seal it, so if I give it to T, now he can't touch whatever. We have to, like you said, chain of custody. Now you have it in your possession. God only knows who's the next person. Is it the attorney? Is it the judge? Or is it the investigator, etc.? So yeah. And yeah, a lot of, like you said, a lot of people, when they think about cyber or this world, it's like, oh, I want to go hack a server, or I want to dump your hash out of Active Directory and let's go do hash to hash around, or or look at Splunk, or look at Snort, look at like IDS rules or whatever. It's not all about, like, cyber is massive, just like we were talking about yesterday, GRC, a whole bunch of massive different things. But I enjoy that.
Sure. And how would someone get into that forensic side of it? Is there a next step? Is there a certification they should take? We'll talk more about certs later, but just on the forensic side of it, if someone's watching this and thinking, man, that sounds really interesting, what would you encourage them to do? Like, what is the next step? Do they reach out to a law firm? Do they get a degree? What would you encourage them to do?
Yeah, so I actually got my master's in cybersecurity, and during my program, we did the great CHFI, right? So you know how everyone says A plus network, and A plus network plus security plus in the CompTIA world. If you're inside of the EC console world, it's like CEH, CHFI, ECSA, and LPT, right? License penetration tester. So that's the chain, and that's what I did, right? I did I did my CEH in 2012, so 10 years ago. So, and then I did this certified hacker forensics investigator. So that's the one, and I did it in V7. Right now, I think they're up to V11 or V12. So God only knows what tools they're out now. But yeah, so that's, if you're looking to get into forensics, I don't know any other forensics certifications besides that one off the top of my head. And yeah, like definitely look into that and set up in case. It's free. You know what I mean? You can tinker with it, mess around with, delete some files off your thumb drive, and then stick it in and see if you can recover it. And these are like things I want to do on my channel as well, but it's very tedious, right? It's very time consuming. It's like, I don't have that much time to like sit there and show people about InCase. But yeah, InCase is definitely a cool tool. It's on Windows and Linux, but I would prefer it's built into Linux. And you can actually get a forensics distro. I forget the distro name. I can send it to you later, but there's actually a forensics distro just for forensics. But I'd use a lot of stuff in Kali.
Very cool. Very cool. Let's switch gears a little bit. So that's the forensic side of it. Let's talk about what many people think of when it comes to cybersecurity, offensive security. You are a penetration tester, which essentially means you get paid to hack into companies. You hack companies, you share with them the vulnerabilities. Often you help patch them or provide some instruction. So as you think through the different companies, different businesses you've worked with, just like the Alligator story, do you have any just interesting stories from your work?
From that side?
Yeah,
not so many interesting. You get the stories like, I want a pen test, right? And then you show them that bill, then they're like, oh, and then because a lot of people, and even in the field, and I was one of them, right? I'm a victim of this. Like the difference between a vulnerability assessment and then a penetration test, right? That kind of assessment. So it's two different things. And I used to think one or the other, like, oh, I'm doing a pen test and I'm just running Qualys. So I'm running Rapid7, and here goes your report. I found your stuff. So now I know what's going on. But, before 8 years ago when I was running OpenVOS, and this was, now it's called, I think, Greenbone. But like, these were things I would run, like, and I would think I'm a hacker, right? And so like there's some interesting stories like that. Like that was about a year ago, and I had a big argument. And I don't like to argue, but I like to stand my ground, right? So he was like, oh, I paid X amount of dollars. I want to get a real pen test. And this was from, like I said, I helped a friend, he sold it because I'm not a salesman. I'm far from a salesman. So he's like, oh, I charge this person X amount of dollars and this is what he needs. I'm like, dude, like this, all he's getting is a quality scan, for $1,000. You know what I mean? Like it was like $1,500 for like 3 or 4 external servers. And I'm like, hey man, like I want to run Qualys and you're going to give them this report. And, like we're not testing, we're not doing code review, we're not doing any of that stuff for $1,500. Like I'd rather go to the beach and build a sandcastle, right? And just, make that somewhere else because I'm not going to waste my time. So that was an interesting story. It wasn't like crazy, but I have crazier stories when I was doing infrastructure, networking stuff, right?
Sure.
I had, let's see, like the company where I was working for at that time bought 2 ESXi servers. And so 2 Dell PowerEdge, servers, beefy machines, and we set up in a ESXi cluster with vCenter. And this is right when HTML5 started, hitting the hotspot for VMware. And before you can just use the ESXi client, and then they went web-based. So, make a long story short, at that point, I laid out, this is a mistake I made, rookie mistake. I laid out all the money, and I was going to upsell them. I bought the server for $5,000. So it's about $15,000, $20,000 or $18,000, and I'm going to charge you $30,000, right, for the whole shebang. And come to find out, like, they didn't want vCenter. They just wanted, this. And I had to argue and say it was a crazy story because I almost lost a lot of money, and they were just going to pretty much buy it out and not pay for the licenses I paid for. Like I got it from a reseller, but then I'm charging like MSRP, and it's like, oh snap, dude, like I might be SOL right now. But thank God, like it worked out. But that was scary because I was in my younger time, and $30,000 was a lot of money doing it by myself. So.
Seriously. And what I find interesting about you is you spent a lot of time in the IT world before transitioning to cybersecurity, which I think is the way to do it. Like cybersecurity as a whole is not entry level. But why did you personally make that decision to transfer from doing some of the infrastructure side of things to transition to a really cybersecurity and offensive security? Was there a pivotal moment, a book you read, a podcast you listened to? Like, how did you get to this specific field?
Yeah, that's interesting because I don't know if you've seen any of my other videos, but I'm a big sneaker guy, right? So big into sneakers. So in my early 20s or my mid 20s, I got my PayPal hack. And I was probably one of those victims that just clicked on a link and put my credentials in and just went to, John Hammett's freaking CNC server, right? I'm just kidding, John. I love you, kid. But, so I got like $900 stolen, and I was 24 years old, right? 24, 25 years old. And I was like, man, and remember, I was studying multimedia, right? And not in undergrad. So I'm like, man, I want to do that. Like, how did this happen? Like, how did someone just take my money? Like, at this point, like, yeah, I was infrastructure. I knew network. I knew firewalls. I knew, back then, semantic SCP. I understood, like, the whole antivirus, NAT rules, and whatever, like the network security aspect. But I didn't know that I can just click a button and not really read a URL and put my credentials, and now I just got pwned. And so I just went to my counselor, right? I just sat down, literally like the next day or 2 days later. I just said, I want to learn how to steal information legally, right? I didn't know hacking, I didn't know those words. Sure. And they said, okay, it's a field called cybersecurity. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to learn about After Effects and Final Cut Pro anymore. I want to do that. And yeah, that's when I transitioned to cyber. And and then I went to, in grad school, I went for my degree, and I liked that, I went to WGU, and I liked it because it was associated with some certifications, right? So it's not like I can go to FIU or a state university and I just learn exactly what I did in undergrad, just on steroids, right? Really coming out of that. And I'll get into maybe this is a question I get a lot, like, is a degree worth it, right? But that's a whole other thing of when we get into like the education, the CISSP,
Sure.
like I said last night. But and then I started, like, I was attracted to that because it had certifications associated with the program, and yeah.
Well, let's dive into that, and let's before we talk about certs, let's talk about WGU specifically. So I graduated my bachelor's in cybersecurity through WGU, and I've always been interested in the master's program. I was actually accepted and enrolled into it right around the new year. And then
Perfect.
I was so I had money saved up, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna get like $4,000 back in taxes. I can use that for tuition. And I ended up
Mm-hmm.
owing a bunch of money in taxes, which totally screwed up my budget. So I had to put it on pause for now. But just share with me, like, what was your experience in the master's program at WGU? Honestly, would you recommend it? Is it worth it? Was it
Yes.
worth it for you?
Yeah. So, right. Let's back up here. That goes along what you just said, right? About the money situation. I had a scholarship from bowling, so I am a big bowler. I bowled my whole life, and I paid college and I made a lot of money bowling. So
Fascinating.
yeah, so I had a scholarship in undergrad. But like so and then with that scholarship money, because I bowled in a Pepsi Cola tournament, and I got like 150 grand. So
Wow.
it was a pretty payout for bowling. And yeah, so if I never got that, and this is where I get the question: is it education? Is a degree worth it versus certs? So I thank God every day that I had the privilege to get that. But if I went back and I said certs or degree, I would never have went to school,
Sure.
right? And that's the God honest truth. Like, if it was a 6, 7 years waste of time, and I could have done that, watching someone like, like Keith Adams. He didn't exist back then, but like I watched Keith Barker a lot from CBT Nuggets. So like he was like a big mentor for me. So like I was like his fanboy. Like I would watch all his CCNA, CCNP stuff, and even when I did my CCIE, and like I don't advertise that certification. Like there's a few I don't really like throw out there saying I have this, even though I just I revealed it. But yeah, and it just like I would I would do a degree if you have some kind of privilege, like a sponsorship or your work paying for it,
Sure.
or a scholarship or something like that. But if you have to pay out of pocket, I would rather you do even PMPT, right, for $300, and that says I know how to hack because I can do all the OSINT. Like that's a certification I really want to get. At some point, I want to do that when the time permits. But like for $300 in a week, you can get the certification that proves that you can do this versus wasting 4 or 5 years in undergrad that just teaches you how to do pre-cal, calculus, all these things that we did. It's like high school and steroids,
Yeah.
and then so that's just my intake. I don't know. Other people can say what they want, but that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And let's just dive into the certification question, because what I find fascinating, crazy about you, like, I know when you first reached out to me, I was looking at your LinkedIn. I'm like, how does this dude have so many certs? And I asked you, like, how many certs do you have? And you're like, I don't know. I've lost count, like over 60. And then it'd be one thing if you had over 60 certs and they're all like A+ level of certs you never heard of. But you have like the OSCP, the CCNA, the CISSP, like all the major certs through the major companies. You have them. So, how? Let's just begin with that
Yeah,
question. How did you do that?
yeah, that's a good question. So probably as you see when I took that little photo of my damn computer rebooting, I had a little picture. I have a little daughter, right? She's not that little anymore, but so before she was born, that's when I did my CCIE, just before she was born. So I did it in 2015. And before that, there was with a group of friends. This is before I was on like really on LinkedIn. I think I said this in with Kevin KevTech. Like I was never into the whole social media, like putting myself. I like to be anonymous. I like to be on a DL. I don't like people knowing who I am and what I'm about because it's my business, right?
Sure.
I never been about like that life, like flaunting and doing that stuff. It's not really in my blood. But once I'll take a step back. So I got my MCSE, which is the Microsoft Certified System Engineer in 2003 server. Before I got, that was my first exam, my first cert. That's 7 exams, right? So, like I said, I probably took over 70 or 80 exams, right? Because all the Microsoft ones are probably 40 or 50, because MCITP, I have 7 MCITPs, right? So back then, I was teaching for a local school. I was teaching the MCITP server for Server 2008. And then that's when they went to the MCSA because they went to the MCITPs because the MCSC, I think something happened with Canada. They said like you can't be called an engineer when you don't have an engineering degree. And Microsoft was like, okay, we have to change these acronyms. And that's when I did the MCITP and the MCTS, those exams. And the MCTS is a Microsoft Certified Technical Specialist or something. And to get back to your question, I was planning on doing an exam a week for 1 year. So that's 52 exams, right? And I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to come up here and say I'm a genius. I'm not a genius. So the way I did it, I would read a book, watch CBT Nuggets. So back then it was Pluralsight. And I would just watch these videos and attempt the exam, right? I failed 2 exams in my whole life. And those 2 exams were the MCSE for the 2003 server. And that was my 7th exam. So I had the MCSA. And then the last one, I cheated. I went and I did a dump. I went on Test King back then and I just crammed. I just memorized the answers. I'm going to be honest. I did that. And yeah, I just did that for that one. And there was another one that I did that for. It was the CCDP, which is the design professional from Cisco. And because I failed the first time. And all the other ones, that was my approach. Because, yeah, I could have probably had a lot more if I just brain dumped, And there's 2 points of views I see on the brain dumps, right? Like, I'm not opposed to it because if you can back it up, like say, for example, me and UT, we're going to be like, oh, let's go get the Azure fundamentals. And if you work in Azure every single day, it's like, dude, let's just go knock it out. Like, let's just go to exam cram, whatever things. I don't know. I haven't taken, any exams lately as, to do like that. A lot of them are like hands-on, like OSCP, from Electrician security and some other ones that I've done. And so yeah, that's pretty much how I did it. Like I did an exam a week, and the CISSP. And the CISSP, I just did it with a group of friends, and that's what I said yesterday. Like I don't think it's worth it. That's just me. Like if you want to be on the offensive side, if you want to be in the pen testing world, it's not a certification that's like like Heath Adams, right? He got it because he needed to have some kind of compliance for CCM security. Guaranteed, if he was working as a pen tester for a company, there's a question I would love to ask him. Hey, would you have gotten your CISSP from for what you're doing every day? Guaranteed. I don't think so. But
he even kind of said that in his video, right? He said he studied for it for a week or whatever because he needed it for that specific purpose. He didn't seem that interested in getting it till he was forced to.
Yeah, and exactly. And I felt the same way at a job I was working, and they wanted someone they asked the team, and like, who's willing to do that cert? I'm like, okay, like, we'll give it a shot. And yeah, and that's when I did it. And I don't, it's not renewed, like it's expired.
Sure.
And I renewed it once. And after that, I was like, I'm not keeping up with these, CEs. I'm not doing it.
Sure. All right. So on the flip side of the question, as we think of offensive security in particular, top 3 certs, what would you recommend from your experience?
That I have, or just in general?
Let's just say in general. You have a lot of certs, so you have a lot of experience studying certs, looking into them. Top 3 certs that you would recommend in the world of offensive security. We'll see who you can offend.
The OSC. All right. Are you brand new to the field, or are you like, you've been doing it and now you're like, your boss like, go get a cert? Let's take a step back. Where are you in your career?
Let's say not brand new. Let's say someone who has, let's just take someone who's graduated from like the WG bachelor's program, right? So they have the A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, Pen Test, CC, SP, like all of those certs, and they have experience doing try hack me, hack the box. So they have some experience under their belt, and they want to break from, let's say, a system admin role into a red team or pen testing role. So that's the person we're talking about. Which certs would you recommend in that case?
Perfect. So in that case, I think I would do OSCP. After doing like more hands-on ones, like I would say, I never took the EJPT. Now I know they just came out with V2. So maybe before OSCP, jump into getting the feet wet into a, practical exam that you're doing just hands-on. You have to write that report at the end. Maybe like EJPT, then OSCP, and then I would say maybe PNTP or I can never remember his acronym. Practical Network Penetration Tester.
I don't remember any of these acronyms, dude.
Yeah, PMPT, and I never took his exam, but from like reviews I've seen from the training, because I do have his training, and so maybe those 3, I would say maybe to break in, and then that's the ones off the top of my head.
Sure, and I'm going to dig your head a little bit more because I know you have the OSCP. When did you pass the OSCP? How recent was that?
2017.
2017. So maybe it's still fresh in your head a little bit. I mean, you teach this stuff on YouTube. So I'm actively studying for the OSCP. I know Nate as well, who streams on this Twitch channel and who's on Discord, is also actively studying for it. What advice would you offer us? So actually, let me set the scene. The OSCP, for those of you watching, the way it's set up now is you get 24 hours to hack 5 machines, if I remember right. One of them's a buffer overflow. One is going to be AD now. AD is for sure on the exam. Before, I don't think it was. And then you get 24 hours to hack these. You get a certain amount of points depending on where you get on each machine, and you get another 24 hours to write essentially a pen test report, and that is how you pass the exam. Did I describe that accurately?
Yeah, 1,000%. So when I took the exam, I didn't have Active Directory. So when I did it, it was 3 BOF, buffer overflow attacks.
Yeah, 3 buffer overflows?
Yeah, I believe there was 3.
Oh, that's brutal.
Yeah, and I'm not good at it. So I'm not good with immunity. I'm not good at looking at applications to credit. Like I don't like it. I guess it's more I'm not really intrigued with it.
Sure.
So I thought I failed. I was like, I didn't think I did well on it. And so to get back to your question, like what I did when I did it, like I did a lot of vulnerable machines, right? So I think it's I have a list. I think it's from Noel J. I forgot the kid's name.
Yeah, I recognize what you're talking about. Sure.
Noel something. I probably have it on one of my favorites, but he has like a spreadsheet, a Google Drive, a Google Sheet with all the recommended VMs that are OSCP like. And back then, like I didn't have a hack the box account because now you just sign up for it. And then you had to like hack your way in and get your, get your little code. And even though you can just, now I can say this, right? Because it's a million years later, all you really had to do is do hack the box /activate and you get the code.
Oh, really?
So
I didn't know that.
yeah,
Interesting.
so yeah, you didn't have to do right click and do all that JS stuff and go through that whole little thing. Yeah, there was a workaround, but that's like cheating. That's like defeats the purpose of like the
Yeah.
challenge. But I did a lot of Vuln Hub machines, and that's what and a friend of mine was good with buffer overflows, so he actually made a box for me and put it on Google Drive, and I would use the techniques I learned from the PWK, training, and just go to town. And yeah, it's a lot different now. I think now it might be even easier because I I know John. I know a lot of people are like really into like the CTFs, right? And into that thing, like okay, like I guess from where I came from, like CTFs, and I'm not really, I think I said this yesterday, or probably a million people probably heard this before. I don't play video games. I never played a video game in my life. So when you go to CTFs, it's more like putting a piece of puzzle. Like a real pen test has nothing to do with the CTF. So sometimes that would get people screwed up because they're thinking in the mindset, okay, like I need to go find a flag. Instead of looking at basic things like maybe SMB V, a V1 is running, SMB whatever is running on your network, or maybe just LDAP is running on a printer that's running 389, and that's like default credentials that they set up. Low hanging fruit. People just look. When you're so deep into like CTFs and you're looking for, you know, hash it or not hash like base 64. You have to go to CyberChef and decrypt hex. This is not the real world. You're not doing that. At least I don't do that, right? Like, but yeah, hopefully that makes sense with the OSCP. That's what I would do. Get on those boxes, and like I said, like right now, do what you're doing. Bloodhound, Forest, Active, doing those boxes that are deep into Active Directory, because even if outside of the OSCP, that's the real world. You know what I mean? That's like 98% of organizations use ADDS and Active Directory domain services. So yeah, I think doing what you're doing is definitely in the right direction.
Sure. That's encouraging. It's interesting. You're the second person who said that. Amoeba Man said the same exact thing about CTFs. I don't think in our interview, but I know he and I have talked about that in the past as well. And he said the same thing. It's like I can count on one hand the amount of CTFs I've done. Because he said the same thing. As a pen tester, you're not going in and looking at robots.txt and finding a link to some file that you go to that's base 64 decoded that you go to CyberChef, or I know one CTF I had like the chemical table, and you had to figure out what the password was. Like, just silliness there. Like, that's not the real world. Now it can be fun if you like puzzles like that, but real world is AD type stuff, or exploiting a printer, or setting up like a rogue LDAP server, having the printer ping back to you. So it's interesting. You're the second person who said that recently about CTFs and looking at Active Directory and some of those more realistic boxes. So that's good. I'm on the right path then, I think. I'm doing some of those things. Let's switch up a little bit again, and let's talk content creation. So you have a YouTube page, Infosec Pat. I will tag it in the YouTube video. You have over 17,000 subscribers when I last checked, over 200 videos. When did you start your YouTube channel? I meant to go back and look, but when did you start the YouTube journey?
November 2019. It's almost 3 years.
Interesting. And you said that you're not one who wants to be in the spotlight. You don't kind of like that attention, but then you started a YouTube channel. So why? What led you to that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I said this on Kevin's thing too, but there was friends, like I come from the infrastructure networking background, like VMware, using EVE-NGs, GNS3. These are all like network emulators when you're doing your CCNA, CCNP, CCIE, even that. And yeah, so I would have friends like, okay, Pat, I just got on, we just got a new Palo Alto, and I don't know really much about Palo. Is like, like, can you help me out? Instead of saying, hey, yeah, so and so, let's do a remote session. Let me jump on. Let's see what's going on. How about like I used to set up private video. Like I'll make a video, just record like, hey, Taylor, this is what we're going to do. We're going to import. I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to the world.
Sure.
And yeah, and then I would just send it off to friends. Like, okay, Jerry needs this, Peter needs this guy needs that. And then one day I was like, all right, I want to just stick this Palo Alto on YouTube. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what I was doing. I still, I still don't know what I'm doing. As far as the content stuff, you look at my thumbnail, I was me. Some guy was trying to IP config, and that's his thing. And I was like, dude, I need help, like doing thumbnails. Like I use PowerPoint, you know what I mean, and just export it as a JPEG. I don't know how to use Canva and Photoshop and all these things, like make these old fancy looking things. Like I don't do that. Like
I'm in the same boat. Yep. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not good at that. Like I can barely upload the video. Like literally, like to make the you'd be surprised. Like just to make my video, I have it so dummy proof. It's like the intro, drag, and then thank you, picture, drag, export, and wait 15 minutes till it's done, an MP4, and I go to my folder, drag that into YouTube, and copy, I have a little notepad that has all the things in it, copy and paste.
Sure.
And then, so it's really, really straightforward. I streamlined. Maybe it's not the best way. Maybe that's why I don't get a million views. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing something wrong but like I said, it wasn't so much of the popularity and like I want to get my name out there. It was more like now, like I said, like I want to give it to Taylor. Like okay, like Taylor, like I want to send this to you. Now instead of sending this to you, maybe Nate can watch this. Maybe some other people can get some benefit. If 10 people watch it, that impacted 10 people. So, and that's what goes into the thing. I'm like, okay, teaching. Like I was never like the spotlight person, so I don't want to like be on camera. I don't want people to know who it was behind who was talking. And then one day I'm like, okay, like maybe if I have like my little ugly face in the bottom, it'd be a little more interactive. Yeah. Okay, he's talking instead of just like, because sometimes I would watch videos like that. I'm like, I just hear a voice, but then it's like, there's no like personable, I don't know, like for me at least, even
it's
when
like
CBT
disembodied,
Nuggets,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like even when I would watch CBT Nuggets videos years ago, it's like they were missing something, and then like that missing something was having the person that's talking their face. So it's like, okay, now I'm that guy's talking to me instead of just like some voice. But yeah, so that's pretty much why I made the YouTube channel, because I'm and it wasn't going to be like when I first came on, like I was showing like, okay, let's set up rogue access points, and set up Wi-Fi pineapples, and let's hack my stuff. It was more hardcore hacking. Like I was teaching how to hack, doing some stuff that like I just was doing it, and that's I got flagged. I actually got 3 strikes, and I got whacked. And I had I only had like I think 1,200
from
subscribers
YouTube?
at that.
Like YouTube did that to you? Oh man.
Yeah. So like, because I would say like how to hack Wi-Fi. I guess YouTube doesn't like the way some things are typed out. And I think they're getting more lenient now because
sure.
You can Google like how to hack this, and it's not like you're not monetized and you get X's everywhere. But like I didn't know. Like I said, I didn't know really too much about YouTube. I was just like, okay, I want to put a camera there. This is how I set up my PF Sense. This is how we're going to do this. This is how we're going to hack that. And then I went off the grid for probably like 3 or 4 months. And I'm like, all right, I'll start doing CCNA training. I'll start doing Microsoft training and VMware stuff. No more hacking. And then I started seeing people putting more, okay, I could do a walkthrough now. Let me word it as, let's do a walkthrough, not let's hack, Mama Duke's Wi-Fi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why it's not more like CTFs and hack the box and try hackneys and doing little basic stuff that we're doing today.
That is fantastic. And if we talk about the YouTube side of it, so I only have about 50 videos in. I haven't been doing it very long, so not even close to your level when it comes to the YouTube world. But what I've noticed is just the content creation part of it can be exhausting. Trying to balance that alongside of working full time, alongside of having a family. So
Mhm.
how have you done it now for 3 years? Do you have certain disciplines in place for creating content? Like, how do you stay motivated?
Oh, I love that question. That's a good question. So what I do is like if my daughter like my daughter's mom and I aren't together. So like if my daughter's with me, then my focus is 100% on her. And but
That's
like
good.
if she's not with me, like tonight she's not with me, and I would dedicate from like 8 a.m. 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. To either study or like do something like. And I try, I try not to put too much thought into it. Like before, I would like try to write things down and try to really think, okay, what am I going to
Sure.
do? Now it's just like, you know, I'll look at my Instagram and like look at my messages or like on Discord and just like okay like ask for recommendations like oh like what would you guys like to see and like have a little like a poll and or I'll just like hey, you know what today I'm just gonna talk about this like uh, and that's pretty much what I do like to stay motivated. I just try to I used to try to put 2 videos out a week, and sometimes that's hard, and especially in the last 4 months when I broke my shoulder. And so yeah, like before that, it was like every at least two a week, and that was my discipline. Like maybe Monday, or, like Wednesdays and Saturdays, or something like that. Like, cause like I said, I played hockey, I bowl, I had my daughter, so it's like
Fought
we had days
alligators.
fight alligators,
Yeah.
like the alligator man. But yeah, so that's the way I try to like balance the time. Yeah, I know that can be difficult, but
That's good. And kind of a follow up on that question, you're clearly a high performer. I mean, you don't get 60 certifications and create content on YouTube and work as a pen tester and do forensic stuff without being a high performer. But what I know about people who are high performers is it's easy to fall into workaholism and that ending up into burnout. So, do you have any disciplines just to stay physically, emotionally, mentally healthy? How do you focus on that side of things?
yeah, that's a good question. My partner always tells me I work too much, and I like sometimes I do like sometimes like my father told me this when I was young. Like if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, right? Probably people have heard that. So I don't feel like I work during the day because if I'm on my computer, like if I'm doing an engagement or if I'm doing something that's associated with cyber or whatever the case may be, I don't really feel like I'm working, and then I'll lose track of time, right? Like, and I'm like, oh man, like I'm just shit. It's 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. Like after work, I'll go to the gym. Like now I'm starting my PT finally, gave me the okay to start working out again. So it's like that's how I start. Before that, I would work out. Have my that's my mental, right? Like go
Sure.
bowling, like get away from the computer and play hockey and do my activities and stuff like that. And yeah, that's what really keeps me probably away from the burnout. Uh, yeah, I think that would be it.
That's good. And hey, believe it or not, we're like at the end of the interview. We're just about to hit an hour. But I do
Yeah.
want to ask at least one more question as we think about cybersecurity, we think about ethical hacking. These are trending fields. And even as I've been releasing more content, like my LinkedIn, people message me on LinkedIn constantly asking how to get into ethical hacking, or like I always love the messages asking how to hack something specific. I'm like, hey, first of all, just get off your computer, right? If you have to ask that, you probably shouldn't be there. I'm sure you experience the same thing. Cybersecurity is definitely trending, and when people hear cybersecurity, I think they think of two things. They hear, hey, I can make a lot of money, and I can work from home, so I'm going to pursue this world of cybersecurity. So I want to have you play the devil's advocate as someone in the field and pretty extensive experience in IT in general. What are some reasons that you would discourage people from pursuing cybersecurity, that you tell them, hold up, stop, don't do this? Why should they not pursue it?
Like you said, the money. Like if you're trying to get into this just for money, like I don't think, and if you're someone that's complacent, and that's one thing like you find in the IT, right? Because I have friends like that work as a sys engineer, and they just been in the same place for 5, 8 years and just doing the same exact thing, doing the same thing over and over and over, and just complacent. And they're happy with that. Obviously, in this world, like what exploit works today, like print nightmare, right? We can see that, and then that got patched, and now it's like, okay, whatever. Like maybe I think like if you're in it for the money, like don't do it. Like if you want to do it, if you're stagnant and complacent, and you're someone that doesn't want to learn new things, stop right there because you're gonna fall behind in the quickness. And yeah, I think those are the answers I would give. Like if you're hungry, if you always want to learn, if you're interested in this is something I lacked because I didn't like to, like I said in the beginning, like I didn't like to network, right? Like I like to stay by myself and stay to myself, like and stay with my social circle. Like now it's like, okay, like having that network skill, not going to configure a router or a switch. I'm talking about networking like with people, because I wasn't really a people person. You know what I mean? I'm a people person with my friends, but I'm not like, yo, T, like, what's doing? How you doing today? Like, I don't care how you doing. You know what I mean? Like that's the way I used to be. And so like, okay, like in this field, we have to be more sociable and network because it's sometimes it is in life, it's sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. So, having that is definitely key because, before I was so like to myself in my own world, like, yeah, I had a good job. I was getting, decent money, but maybe like if I just, and I guess don't ever feel like you can ask for help. That was a problem with me. Like if I say, hey, Taylor, like for an example, and this is a real example, right? Like I remember like there was this kid, like he was a kid, he was like 21 years old. Um, and he was doing some stuff on Cisco call manager. And I come from the routing and switching world and firewalls, not the voice world. And he aced that thing, and I needed a SIP trunk, something that moves voice data to one of you know a router in the cloud, not like one of the these routers, and I didn't know how to do that, right? And I was like, man, I don't want to access this freaking kid, you know what I mean? Like I was like, I'm just gonna Google it. I'll call Cisco before I access 21-year-old kid, like so. And that's the wrong attitude, right? Like, don't feel, like, I don't know how old you are, but, like, I know John, you had John on here, and I think he's in his mid 20s, right? I think he is.
It's crazy.
I
Yeah, I think
think
you're right.
and I'll be the first one. He'll fucking kid, excuse my language, like, that guy runs circles around me, right? That guy is on a different level, but he's super humble, super chill, but like, if I needed something with assembly or doing something with low level stuff, if I say, hey, John, I never did this because I don't know him like that. But like if I say, hey, can I bother you? I'm sure he would be like, okay, yeah, let's jump on a call whenever he has time because he has his life too. But I feel like don't be like that. That's my thing. Don't feel like you cannot ask for help because I believe the cybersecurity, this community is way better than like the IT and systems community because that's where I came from, right? So I came from, okay, T's going to be the new system engineer. Fucking like, is he going to try to take my job? I'm not going to give him DA accounts. I'm not going to do this. Like, I'm going to keep this for me. Like, because if he knows what I have, it's an insecurity, right? It's insecurities. And in this world, it's like we're a team. We're all like one. And in that world, it's like me versus you. Who's the better engineer? Instead of like, okay, like let's work as a team. And having those experiences from from those fields, systems, networking, I had that experience. So that's why I can talk on that.
It's so good, man. Teamwork makes the dream work. Okay, I said that was the last question, but I do have one
Yeah, go for
truly
it.
final question for you. So
Mm-hmm.
on the flip side of it, I want you to speak for a moment to someone who is not in IT right now. Let's say they're in the banking world, maybe they're in retail. Like I remember working as retail. I used to be a supervisor at Sam's Club back in the day. Maybe they're in retail, but they want to break into IT. They want to get that first IT job. What advice would you offer them as someone who's been in the field for a long time, has extensive experience in the field? How would you encourage that person?
Yeah, most definitely. First thing, welcome to the field, and you're going to be way better off than me. The reason being is because when I came into the field, there was virtual PC. I don't even know if you even know about that, but virtual PC was before Hyper-V. It's from Microsoft. So they didn't have no VirtualBox, they didn't have no VMware Workstation, VMware Player, Fusion. So when I started, I had to have physical machines. So when I was working at this place, I would have 10 machines in my house, hooked up to a switch, and this room will be 900 degrees, right? So that's the first thing is like starting out, like, getting your A plus. And me saying that, you didn't ask like good, thank God you didn't ask, but like, what's the hardest certification? A plus was my hardest certification.
It is hard. I agree with you. It was way more difficult than I was expecting. The core 1 and
Yeah,
core 2. Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. Interesting.
So that was because I'm not a geek. I'm not into computers. I'm not into like the nitty gritty North Bridge, South Bridge, Veriano, Brooklyn Bridge. But like, so now, like, get a lab. Understand like where you want to be. Have a vision, because IT is so broad. You obviously want to get that help desk, maybe understand, like, get into help desk would be ideal. Then you can branch from there. Like, maybe as a help desk, you're going to probably touch Office 365. You're going to touch Active Directory. You're going to touch printers. You're going to touch maybe,
Unfortunately, printers
yeah,
suck.
yeah. Maybe you're going to touch a firewall if you're a small business. Maybe you have to, like, open up a port. So, something. So at some point, now you can say, okay, I touched a firewall. That's network security. I touched Office 365. That's a cloud. And maybe you found one of these videos and you said, okay, I want to do, I'll upload Kali Linux. So let me try to learn Linux or pen test or cybersecurity. So I guess there's so many different avenues to go down, and there's so much resources today. So it's super, super easy to jump in the field, and everything's free.
Yep.
I think I always look at it as the paid thing as a donation, right? Because technically, if you're good enough, even if you have, these platforms like CBT Nuggets, other ones out there, I'm not going to name them, you can get them for free, if you know what I mean, right?
Yep.
But obviously that's that's doing bad things or being an a-hole
That
or
gets you
not
banned from
supporting them.
YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can just donate. Like, for example, if you have a few bucks a month, if you're interested in CCM security, here's $30 and you can access whatever. CBC Nuggets is, I think, $60. So IT Pro TV, this is 50. Like, but all that stuff you can get on the interwebs. I want to keep it at that, right? If you know how to browse the internet, I'm sure you can find it.
Sure.
So, but support your fellow guy, cyber people. But that's what I would do. Have your laptop, load up VirtualBox. It's free 99. Download. Go to evaluation copies of Windows. Install Windows. Get maybe Ubuntu if Kali Linux is too intimidating, and just learn as much as you can, and maybe do some interning. Like, get on LinkedIn and say, put a little message, hey, like, I'm working at Pizza Hut today, but I would like to do this. I'm willing to work for free. You don't have to give me none. Like, put me on a Teams account and let me just shadow your people. Like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't have to do anything. Let me just look and visualize what
That's
it is
excellent.
a day-to, like a day-to-day, in your world, see if I'm even intrigued with it. There's so many avenues now. Like when I came up, like I had to go to a local school, tech school, to do the MCSE, to do this. I had to like build out machines, and now it's so easy. It's so much. There's no excuses.
No excuses. So good. Well, hey Pat, thank you again
Mhm.
for taking the time, because I'm pretty sure is it 11 or is it midnight in Florida
No,
right now where you're at?
it's 11:11 actually.
All right. Well, I want to let you get to bed, but hey, thank you
Yeah.
again for taking the time to hang out, answer questions, provide advice. It's helped me personally, and I'm sure those who watch this after the fact will also be helped by it. And for those of you watching, man, make sure you check out Infosec Pat's YouTube channel. He has some really, really good content, and what I like about your content, Pat, is the you've been doing some of the basics on Try Hack Me, which I think are missed. People want to dive into like the crazy CTF side of it, but I noticed you were doing like the networking basics because networking is important. But what I think is helpful about your video, especially in those basic areas, is you have all this experience. So as you do the walkthrough, you can provide some experience from what it's like to be in the field. So once again, for those of you watching, check
Mhm.
out his content. I've been helped by it. I think you guys will be helped by it as well.
Appreciate it. Thank you so
All that
much.
Yeah, thank you, man. All that being said, for those of you watching, thank you for hanging out with us, and I will catch you guys next time.